focus with the next hour on artists who deal with questions that come from the sciences. My first example will be genetics. My second example will be concepts of knowledge production in regard to natural history museums. And my third example will be an artist who deals with questions of perception, which means that we are more or less close to the natural sciences with what I do today. It goes without saying that the whole idea of artistic knowledge production is much, much wider and much more rich. Okay, I think that's it. I start my talk with a quotation. The quotation is the following. People believe that scientists are there to lecture them, poets, musicians, artists, and the like, to please them. That they have something to teach them does not cross their minds. It was the famous philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein who wrote these sentences in his notebook in the year 1950. Sorry, but this is the very famous artist Mikhail Matyushin. Mikhail Matyushin was also during that time the head of the Department for Perception Theory. Interestingly enough, all these departments which dealt with questions of the natural sciences, the head directors were artists. Because during that time, all over the world, people thought that artists had the deeper knowledge and the deeper understanding and come closer to questions of how our perception system works. So, the US-American photographer Edward Steichen, for example, experimented with photographically production methods and genetic manipulated plant material that he has extracted out of hybridization, and was presumably the first artist ever who refers directly with photographical developments to genetic processes. This is Edward Steichen, and you see him here with one of his plants. He he changed the DNA of that plant on his knowledge about how photography works, and because he was a photographer, and these are the plants which then grew in his garden here. My first example is an artistic approach that is obviously related to the natural sciences, or to be more precise, to genetics and genetic engineering. But this does not mean at all that artists who work with material from the sciences just mimic the habits. It means much more to understand that this artistic approach implies a strong debating and comment on the practices of scientific research. This here is an example of what we call transgenic art. And one of the most popular artists in that field is Eduardo Kach. I thought of his installation, and as you could see, he used that sentence, and he used what kind of communication tools do we have. He converted that in Morse code. This then was converted. He sent that to a company who's able to create DNA structure and to modify a DNA code. This was the way it was transferred. They sent it back to him, also they let Eduardo Kach know what they did. And this, at the very end here, then, is the DNA code that came out of it, which you saw. We'll come back to the installation, which you saw already on that petri dish. This is a new bacteria that came out of that transformation in real time. You see that here, this is the constant changing of the DNA screen on the wall. Kach transfers this process, which is usually only possible in a controlled laboratory, into the gallery space, and allows it to be steered by the participants via the internet, who interact with biological processes and procedures and make the results of this technology, which is part of everyday practice in a lab, visible in public. This procedure, what is called in theory of knowledge a so-called space of knowledge, in which, by definition, not only the representation of knowledge, but also the instruments and media of knowledge